So welcome back. In this lesson, I'm gonna add a new class and a new method, and that is for setting our user. Let me first go through coding it, then I will explain why we do this and why do we need it. So I'm gonna make a new file, that's Command N, and I'm gonna call this one set user or set the user. And as you can imagine, this is again one of those classes that we definitely need to have our app data in it because it needs to get access to our app data. So import app data, and it has only one method that's a void called set, and let's see what we do in our set. Like I said, bear with me for a second and I will explain to you why we do what we do. Now, actually, this isn't how we should do the set. Our set needs to have, and I completely forgot this, we need to set our users similar to how we did it temporarily in our list view controller. We had to give it a name, an email, and a UID. So I'm gonna say set with name, and that is NS string imp name, and I'm gonna call it an email, of course, NS string imp email and UID, and I'm gonna say NS string let's call it imp UID. All right, so let's copy that, and I'm going to take that to my .m. So let's talk about this for a second. Why do we need to do this, and what's the significance of this? So there are several situations that you need to set your user, and that is, one of them is the very first time, let me write this, the very first time the app loads. So obviously this very first time we have to set our user. Then the other thing that we have to keep in mind is every time user registers online, we have to set our user on the local disk. And more importantly, if the user logs out, we have to register that our user is no longer on the working online anymore. So a combination of this makes us need something that helps us set our user. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got two errors up here. Let me just quickly see what these things are. I don't think that's an actual error. It's just something got stuck in here. Yeah. So in the .m, here's what I want to do. I want to say, first of all, as it's been a tradition in here for a while, shared instance equals app data shared manager. So that part is taken care of. Now, if we are about to make a new user or set a new user, and this is very important, if we are setting a new user, we have to know which list belongs to this new upcoming user. So I'm going to do the same thing that we have done once before, and that is for grocery list class any in shared instance.current LST, I'm going to say if any dot list owner dot UID equals shared instance dot current user dot UID. If the currently logged in user, and keep that in mind, this currently logged in user is not the user we are setting. That's an upcoming user. So if that is the case, then I want to change the name of the owner of this list. To whom? To the new one. So let's make the new one first. I'm going to say user class. I'm going to call this user class temp user equals, let's say user class alloc init with imp name imp email, and imp UID. Simple. Now, if any of the lists that we currently have belong to the current user and is not something that we have been invited to it, then of course any dot list owner becomes that temp user. And I don't need those brackets, so it's easier. And if that did happen and it was all done, then shared instance dot current user becomes temporary user. And that's about that. So one more time, every time we set the user, such as when we register online or when we log in, we check any list that does really belong to us and we are just going to a different new user. We just make sure that we take those with us, and of course we switch our current user to the new one that is coming up. And now that we have our right user to disk, we could actually write this user to the disk as well, which is really something we should do. So I'm going to go up here, say import write user to disk, and in set the user.m, I'm going to say write user to disk write. So now we know that our user, every time that our user is set, it's also recorded to the disk as well, which is really, really what we want. So let's keep this up to here, and then we move on to our next lesson.